There's a pest problem in your garden right now that you have already spent money trying to solve. Maybe it was the aphids that came back 3 weeks after the spray. Maybe it was the fungus gnats multiplying in every pot on your porch despite every sticky trap you put out. Maybe it was the yellowjackets that made your backyard unusable for an entire summer. Whatever it was, you bought something, it worked partially, and the problem came back. That cycle is not a coincidence. It is a business model. What almost nobody at that garden center is going to tell you is that an entire category of plants has been solving these exact insect problems for hundreds of millions of years without chemicals, without ongoing cost, and without any help from anyone. Carnivorous plants did not develop their trapping mechanisms as a novelty. Nutrient-poor environments gave them no choice, and the insects landing nearby became the only reliable source of nitrogen and phosphorus available. Put those plants in a garden where pests are already present, and you are not adding a curiosity. You are adding a predator that works around the clock, never needs recharging, never washes off in the rain, and gets more effective every year it grows. This list covers 13 carnivorous plants, what they catch, how their mechanisms work, where they grow, what conditions they need, and exactly how each one fits into a real pest management strategy. Some of them will change what you spend at the garden center this season. A few of them will change how you think about what a garden is actually capable of doing on its own terms. Plant 1. The Venus flytrap. Almost everything most people think they know about the Venus flytrap turns out to be wrong, and that gap between reputation and reality is costing gardeners the chance to use one of the most precisely engineered pest control tools available at any price point. Diania muscipula grows naturally within roughly a 100-mile radius of Wilmington, North Carolina, one of the most geographically restricted native ranges of any carnivorous plant in the world. Wet, boggy, nutrient-poor, coastal, plain soil with full sun exposure. That is the entire habitat. It did not survive there for millions of years by being fragile. Each trap is a modified leaf with 2 lobes fringed with interlocking teeth. On the inner surface of each lobe sit 3 tiny trigger hairs that require 2 contacts within 20 seconds, or the same hair touched twice, before the trap fires. That filtering system eliminates false triggers from raindrops and debris entirely, which means every closure is a real capture. When the threshold trips, the trap snaps shut in as little as 1/10 of a second. The interlocking teeth hold larger prey in place while the trap seals completely, and digestive enzymes dissolve the prey over 5 to 12 days before the trap reopens. In a garden, the Venus flytrap works best against crawling insects at ground level, ants, beetles, and the occasional small caterpillar. Each trap opens and closes 3 to 5 times before it dies back and new growth replaces it. So, a container placed near the base of plants troubled by crawling insects functions as a continuous maintenance-free ground-level trap at 0 operating cost after the initial purchase. Here's the critical thing most people get wrong with this plant, and the reason most people who try it conclude it is impossible to keep alive. Tap water kills it. The dissolved minerals in municipal water supply accumulate in the root zone, and the plant declines within weeks. Distilled water or collected rainwater in a tray that keeps the medium consistently moist is the only correct approach. Pure sphagnum moss and perlite with no added fertilizer, a minimum of 4 hours of direct sunlight daily, and cold dormancy between 0 and 10 degrees Celsius for 3 to 5 months through winter cover everything this plant needs. USDA Zone 8 gardeners can overwinter it outdoors with light protection. Colder zones bring it inside. The plant costs between $5 and $15 at most nurseries. A single season of ant and beetle damage to a vegetable bed costs considerably more than that in lost yield. Plant 2, the sundew. Per unit of garden space, no carnivorous plant outperforms the sundew. And if you are dealing with fungus gnats, which most gardeners growing anything in a pot are dealing with whether they realize it or not, this is the plant that breaks that cycle more effectively than anything sold in a spray bottle. Drosera contains over 200 species distributed across every continent except Antarctica, with the greatest concentration in southwestern Australia and the Cape region of South Africa. The trapping mechanism runs continuously without requiring any trigger event at all. Every leaf carries stalked glands called tentacles, each tipped with a droplet of sticky mucilage that glistens in sunlight. Insects attracted by that shimmer, particularly fungus gnats, fruit flies, and shore flies, land on the leaf and find themselves immediately held. Neighboring tentacles then bend slowly toward the struggling insect through a movement called thigmotropy, and the leaf itself may curl around larger prey over several hours before digestive enzymes finish the work. Here's what most people do not understand about fungus gnats, and this is the part that changes how you treat the problem. The adult insects emerging from your soil are not the primary damage. The larvae living in moist soil and feeding on plant roots are what cause the wilting and decline that most gardeners misdiagnose as overwatering. By the time you see adults flying around your plants, the root damage is already happening below the surface. A single Drosera capensis under good conditions catches dozens of adult gnats per week before they can complete their reproductive cycle, breaking the population continuously and without any chemical intervention. The Cape sundew from South Africa tolerates a wider range of conditions than almost any other species in the genus. It self-seeds prolifically and regenerates new plants from root fragments, meaning one original plant, purchased for $5 to $10, can populate an entire container over time with no additional cost. Sphagnum and perlite, distilled or rainwater, and good light cover the basic requirements. Never fertilize it. The fertilizer eliminates the nutrient deficiency that drives the plant to trap insects in the first place, and a well-fed sundew stops catching prey. Plant 3, the pitcher plant, Sarracenia. No carnivorous plant combines architectural drama with native North American hardiness the way Sarracenia does. And for gardeners dealing with wasp pressure, the kind that makes outdoor living spaces unusable for weeks. At a stretch in summer, nothing else on this list comes close to matching its volume or its specific effectiveness. The genus contains 8 to 11 species distributed across the eastern coastal plain from Florida north to New Jersey, and west through the Gulf states into Texas, with several species reaching the Great Lakes region and Canada. All of them evolved to intercept flying insects through a pitfall trap that works on a simple and brutally effective principle. Each leaf forms a tall, hollow tube filled with digestive fluid, topped by a hood that partially covers the opening and lined internally with downward-pointing hairs and a waxy coating that removes any possibility of an insect gaining purchase once it enters. Flying insects drawn by nectar around the rim and by the coloration of the hood enter the tube, lose their grip on the waxy interior, and fall into the fluid below. Breakdown takes days to weeks, depending on the prey. Sarracenia flava, the yellow trumpet, specifically attracts and traps large numbers of yellowjacket wasps in spring and early summer. A grouping of 3 to 5 mature specimens in full sun near an outdoor seating area represents one of the most practical natural wasp controls available to any American gardener. No annual replacement, no reapplication after rain, no protective equipment required to deploy it. Most species handle USDA zones 6 through 8 without protection, and Sarracenia purpurea pushes that range all the way to zone 3, making it one of the few carnivorous plants genuinely suited to northern gardens where winter temperatures eliminate most other options in this category. A mature Sarracenia costs between $15 and $30 at a specialist nursery. A professional wasp nest removal costs between $100 and $900 depending on location and nest size, and it does nothing to prevent next season's colony from establishing in the same area. Plant 4, the tropical pitcher plant, Nepenthes. The pitfall trap that Sarracenia refined for temperate North America, Nepenthes took to an entirely different scale across the tropical forests of Southeast Asia. The largest species produce pitchers 40 centimeters long that have trapped lizards, frogs, and in documented cases, small rodents, though the prey relevant to garden pest control sits considerably further down the size range. Native to Borneo, the Philippines, Sumatra, and parts of northern Australia, Madagascar, and the Seychelles, Nepenthes produces its pitchers at the ends of tendrils extending from leaf tips, hanging freely and filling naturally with digestive fluid as the plant grows. A healthy specimen carries multiple active pitchers simultaneously under warm, humid conditions. Fungus, gnats, fruit flies, and small moths are the primary garden pests caught in container-grown Nepenthes, and the continuous passive trapping across multiple pitchers makes the plant productive around the clock without any management from the grower. Here's what makes Nepenthes particularly valuable for indoor plant collectors and greenhouse growers specifically. Most commercial fungus gnat treatments are soil drenches that require precise application timing, miss the egg stage entirely, and need repeating every 2 to 3 weeks through the growing season. A Nepenthes hanging above or beside a collection of affected plants intercepts adults continuously throughout the season with no scheduling, no measuring, and no recurring costs beyond the initial purchase. For most American gardeners starting out, Nepenthes ex ventrata, a naturally occurring hybrid between ventricosa and alata, offers the widest temperature tolerance, vigorous pitcher production, and reliable performance under typical indoor or sheltered outdoor conditions. Zones 9 through 11 support it outdoors year-round. Colder zones move it inside through winter to a bright window before returning it outside in summer. Orchid bark, perlite, and sphagnum in a hanging basket where the pitchers hang freely, combined with regular misting, cover what this plant needs to stay productive. Plant 5, the cobra lily. Growing wild only within a specific band of mountain stream margins and seepage bogs in Northern California and Southern Oregon, between 300 and 2,000 meters elevation, Darlingtonia californica earns its common name completely. The tubular trap rises from the base in a column that curves at the top into a domed hood with a forked tongue-like appendage hanging below the opening. That hood is covered in translucent white patches that admit diffuse light into the interior of the trap, and this is where the design becomes genuinely sophisticated. Insects that enter and attempt to escape navigate toward what appears to be an opening, but is actually a false light panel. They exhaust themselves against the translucent surface until they fall into the digestive fluid at the base. Unlike Sarracenia, the cobra lily produces no digestive enzymes of its own, relying instead on a community of bacteria and microorganisms living in the trap fluid to handle decomposition and nutrient absorption. The critical growing challenge outside its native range is root temperature. This is the single thing that kills most cobra lily plants in cultivation, and it is the reason most people who try to grow it and fail never understand what went wrong. In its natural habitat, cold mountain streams flow beneath and around the root systems continuously, keeping the growing medium cool even when air temperatures climb. Replicating that requires either a constant trickle of cold water through the medium or a larger outer container filled with cold water that is changed frequently. Allow the root zone to warm up in summer and the plant declines, regardless of how well every other condition is met. Get that one thing right, and the cobra lily becomes one of the most visually arresting specimens available at any price point, while catching a meaningful volume of flying insects throughout the growing season. It stops visitors mid-conversation every time. For gardeners in the Pacific Northwest, where cool summer temperatures and naturally soft water make replicating its native conditions straightforward, this is one of the most rewarding and most underused plants available in the entire region. Plant 6, the butterwort. For gardeners dealing specifically with fungus gnats and shore flies near houseplants or greenhouse benches, the butterwort may deliver a better return per dollar spent than anything else on this entire list. And it is almost certainly the most overlooked carnivorous plant in cultivation. Pinguicula is a genus of over 80 species distributed across Europe, North America, Central America, and parts of Asia, with the greatest horticultural development centered on the Mexican species that have become widely available through specialist nurseries for $10 to $20 per plant. Two types of glands cover the flat, slightly succulent-looking leaves. Pedunculate glands secrete the sticky mucilage that traps insects. Sessile glands secrete the digestive enzymes that break them down. The leaf surface carries a slight glistening quality in good light, which is where the common name comes from. Small flying insects at the scale of fungus gnats and fruit flies land on the leaf, hold immediately in the mucilage, and are digested over the following days without any action required from the grower. Here's what separates the butterwort from every other solution most people try for fungus gnats, and this is worth understanding clearly before you spend another dollar on sticky traps. Sticky traps catch adults but do nothing about eggs or larvae already in the soil. Soil drenches treat larvae but require repeated applications and miss adults entirely. The butterwort catches adults continuously, breaking the reproductive cycle at the surface while any soil treatment handles the larval stage below. The two approaches are genuinely complementary, and the butterwort handles its half of the problem indefinitely after a single purchase. Mexican species including Pinguicula morinensis, Pinguicula cyclosecta, and the hybrid Pinguicula aphrodite tolerate lower humidity than most other carnivorous genera, grow in standard well-drained mineral soil rather than bog mix, and produce continuous new trapping leaves through their summer growing phase. Through winter, they enter a compact, non-carnivorous resting rosette that requires almost no water at all. That combination of ease, ornamental appeal, and specific effectiveness against one of the most pervasive soil pests in cultivation makes butterworts a higher practical value addition to most plant collections than plants with considerably more dramatic reputations and considerably higher price tags. Plant 7, the bladderwort. The fastest carnivorous plant on Earth operates entirely out of sight, and most gardeners who grow it have no accurate sense of how much work it is actually doing beneath the surface of their water features. Utricularia is the largest carnivorous genus, containing over 230 species, growing across every continent except Antarctica in aquatic, semi-aquatic, and terrestrial environments. The trapping mechanism is a vacuum-powered suction bladder maintained under negative pressure relative to the surrounding water or soil moisture. Each bladder seals with a trap door fitted with sensitive trigger hairs. When a small organism brushes against those hairs, the trapdoor opens inward and the pressure differential pulls the prey inside in as little as 10 milliseconds before the door reseals and the bladder begins resetting for its next capture. That reset cycle completes in 15 to 30 minutes. Here's the number that matters for anyone with a water feature, a rain barrel, or any standing water on their property. A single female mosquito can lay up to 300 eggs per batch and complete her reproductive cycle in as little as 7 to 10 days in warm weather. Every mosquito larva that Utricularia consumes before it emerges as an adult is 300 potential mosquitoes removed from the following generation. Growing Utricularia gibba or Utricularia vulgaris in garden ponds, water features, and rain barrels creates a self-sustaining biological control system that compounds in effectiveness over time as the plant population establishes and spreads. No maintenance beyond the initial introduction. Small, attractive, snapdragon-like flowers appear above the water surface through the growing season, and the plant costs between $5 and $15 for a starter portion from a specialist aquatic nursery. Commercial mosquito larvicides for a single rain barrel cost between $15 and $30 per season and require reapplication every 30 days. The bladderwort applies itself. Plant 8. The water-wheel plant. The aquatic equivalent of the Venus flytrap survives in fewer and fewer places across its native range, and the decline of Aldrovanda vesiculosa through much of Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia tells a story about water quality degradation that goes well beyond the fate of a single unusual plant. This rootless, free-floating aquatic plant produces whorls of leaves radiating outward from a slender branching stem, each leaf terminating in a small snap trap structurally and mechanically close to the Venus flytrap. The same hair contact trigger system, the same rapid closure, the same digestion of small aquatic invertebrates, water fleas, and mosquito larvae. It is listed as endangered across significant portions of its native range, meaning every gardener who successfully cultivates it in a pond or water feature is contributing to the preservation of a species under genuine extinction pressure. Growing entirely submerged, it requires warm water above 20 degrees Celsius, very low mineral content, and the acidic, extremely clean conditions that a well-maintained bog garden water feature naturally provides. For gardeners already managing a pond carefully with collected rainwater or a dedicated filtration system, the addition of the water-wheel plant adds both a conservation contribution and continuous mosquito larva control to a feature that may already be functioning as a garden focal point. The cost is almost nothing beyond the initial specimen price. Specialist aquatic plant nurseries carry it periodically, with prices typically ranging from $20 to $50 for a small starter portion. The combination of ecological significance, functional pest control, and sheer biological novelty makes it one of the most rewarding plants on this list for the gardener who already has the infrastructure to support it. Plant 9, the corkscrew plant. Genlisea traps its prey in a way that nothing else in the plant world replicates, and the mechanism only becomes stranger the more closely you examine it. Across roughly 30 species native to Africa and Central and South America, growing in wet, sandy, nutrient-poor soils and shallow water margins, the genus produces 2 entirely different leaf types simultaneously. Flat, photosynthetic leaves that function like any other plant's foliage, and hollow, underground, or submerged leaves twisted into a helical corkscrew shape lined with inward-pointing hairs. Protozoa and other microscopic soil organisms follow chemical gradients into the trap, navigate inward through the spiral structure, and find that the hairs blocking their retreat make reversing direction impossible. Digestion happens in a chamber at the end of the trap that the organism entered by following what appeared to be a nutrient gradient toward food. The primary prey is microscopic soil organisms rather than flying insects, which means the corkscrew plant's contribution to pest management is less visible and less immediately measurable than a Sarracenia filling with wasps or a sundew covered in gnats. But the management of soil protozoan populations contributes to a healthier, more balanced soil microbial ecosystem that reduces the conditions in which harmful soil organisms proliferate over time. Small, attractive, violet-like flowers appear above the soil surface through the growing season. The growing requirements align closely with sundews and butterworts, and the plant fits naturally into any established carnivorous collection without demanding separate infrastructure or significant additional investment. For gardeners who have already built a bog container garden and want to add depth to what that ecosystem is doing at the soil level, the corkscrew plant is the logical next addition, and one of the most scientifically remarkable plants available for under $20. Plant 10. the rainbow plant. In direct sunlight, Biblis earns its name in a way that no photograph fully captures. The glands on each leaf refract light across the visible spectrum in a shimmering, iridescent display that stops people mid-sentence when they encounter it for the first time, and then it quietly gets on with trapping the insects that caused the effect in the first place. 7 species distributed across Australia and one extending into New Guinea grow in seasonally wet, sandy, nutrient-poor soils. The leaves carry 2 types of stalked glands, one producing the rainbow refracting sticky mucilage that holds small insects exactly as sundew tentacles do, and one secreting the digestive enzymes that finish the process. For pest control, Biblis works against small flies, thrips, and fungus gnats through the same passive adhesive mechanism as Drosera, adding meaningful redundancy to a carnivorous plant pest management system that already includes sundews and butterworts. Annual species, including Biblis liniflora, germinate readily from seed after a smoke treatment or gibberellic acid soak that mimics the bushfire conditions, triggering germination in the wild. From germination to flowering takes only a few months, and the plant can run as an annual through any warm growing season in any climate. Seed packets cost between $3 and $8 from specialist suppliers, making this one of the most cost-effective entries on the list. The visual effect it produces in a garden setting, particularly in morning sunlight, is in a separate category from anything else available at a comparable price point. The pest control function runs quietly alongside that display, whether you are thinking about it or not. Plant 11, the Portuguese sundew. Most carnivorous plants require bog conditions that exclude them from the dry, rocky, alkaline soils, covering enormous portions of the American Southwest and West. The Portuguese sundew is one of the only members of the group that solves pest problems in those exact conditions, without any soil modification at all. Drosophila lusitanica, native to the Iberian Peninsula, North Africa, and the Azores, grows naturally on thin, rocky, alkaline cliff faces and dry hillsides, conditions that most other carnivorous plants would not survive for a single season. The passive adhesive trapping mechanism works through the same stalked glands as other sundews, catching small flies and midges on contact, and the plant completes its annual cycle through spring, summer, flowering, seed set, and autumn dieback before repeating the process indefinitely through self-seeding with no replanting required. Here is why this matters specifically for gardeners in California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, and the broader American Southwest. Most carnivorous pest control recommendations are functionally useless in those regions because the plants that perform the function require bog conditions that are the opposite of everything those climates provide. The Portuguese sundew grows where those gardeners actually garden: thin, fast-draining, alkaline soil in full sun with minimal water, and it establishes a self-sustaining colony that requires no management once started. Seeds are available from specialist suppliers for $3 to $10. An established colony costs nothing to maintain after that. The fly and midge pressure it addresses year-round in those regions is a real and persistent problem for anyone growing vegetables or spending time outdoors, and this is the one plant in this entire category built to handle it in those specific conditions. Plant 12. The marsh pitcher plant, Heliamphora. The oldest pitcher plant lineage in the Western Hemisphere evolved in one of the most isolated environments on Earth, the ancient tabletop mountains called Tapuas, rising from the Venezuelan, Brazilian, and Guianan highlands, have been separated from the surrounding landscape for tens of millions of years, producing plants that arrived at their solutions to nutrient poverty in complete isolation from every other carnivorous lineage on Earth. Heliamphora is the result of that isolation, and it shows. The structure is the simplest of all pitcher plants, a hollow tube formed from a single leaf with a small nectar spoon at the top that draws insects in, and a small overflow notch near the rim that prevents the frequent heavy rains of its native habitat from diluting the trap fluid to the point of uselessness. No enzymes come from the plant itself. A bacterial community living in the fluid at the base handles breakdown and nutrient absorption. And the trap's effectiveness relies entirely on the slippery interior surface, preventing any insect from climbing back out once it has lost its footing. Cool to cold temperatures, high humidity, and very pure water make this a plant for highland terrariums or cool greenhouses rather than open outdoor gardens across most of the United States. Honest assessment places it in the specialist category rather than the practical pest management category. The pest control output is modest compared to the volume trapping of Sarracenia or Nepenthes, but for gardeners who have already built a controlled growing environment and want to add a plant of genuine evolutionary and scientific significance to what that space is doing, Heliumphora carries a depth of history and biological interest that no other plant on this list approaches. Specialist specimens are available from experienced growers for between $25 and $75 depending on species and size. Plant 13, the Albany pitcher plant. No plant on this list makes the case for what the natural world is actually capable of more clearly than Cephalotus follicularis, and once you understand what it represents, it changes how you see every other carnivorous plant on this list. The sole species in its own family, Cephalotaceae, it shares no close relationship with Sarracenia, Nepenthes, Heliumphora, or Darlingtonia, and yet all 5 lineages independently arrived at the same functional solution: a hollow trap with a hood, a slippery interior, and a digestive fluid through entirely separate evolutionary pathways across different continents and different geological eras. Nature arrived at the pitfall trap as an answer to nutrient-poor environments not once, not twice, but at least 4 times independently. That is what convergent evolution looks like when the selection pressure is strong enough. Growing in a very specific strip of wet, peaty, sandy coastal soil in the extreme southwest of Western Australia, Cephalotus produces flat photosynthetic leaves alongside small, squat-lidded pitchers rigged with vertical exterior ribs, a toothed rim around the opening, and a translucent area under the lid that creates the same false light disorientation as the cobra lily, through a mechanism evolved completely independently on the other side of the world. Ants, beetles, and crawling insects are the primary prey. Cool to moderate temperatures, high humidity, and acidic nutrient-poor soil are the requirements. The slow growth places it firmly in the specialist and collector category, and specimens cost between $20 and $60 from reputable growers. The plant rewards patience with a presence and a biological story that no faster, cheaper, or easier plant can replicate. Here's the number that closes this list. Research published across multiple botanical journals documents carnivorous plants reducing target pest populations by between 40 and 70% in controlled growing environments without any supplementary chemical treatment. The 13 plants on this list collectively represent 5 independently evolved trapping strategies, continuous pest control across flying, crawling, aquatic, and soil-dwelling insect categories, 0 reapplication cost after establishment, and a fundamentally different answer to the question of what a garden can do when you stop fighting the natural world and start building it deliberately into your space. Every product on the pest control shelf has a price per application and an expiration date. Every plant on this list has a price per decade and gets more effective as it matures. That is not a small difference in value. That is a completely different category of investment.